Our next presenter is Ms. Tamara Calhoun. Tamara Calhoun is currently the section manager for the Occupational Licensing section of the TCEQ. Tamara Calhoun is currently the section manager for the Occupational Licensing section of the TCEQ. She has worked in occupational licensing of the Occupational Licensing and Registration Division since July 2003. In 2006, Tamara was the lead program staff and assisted development and implementation of the electronic reporting system for training providers known as TROLLS, Training Roster Online Submittal, which now is a successful reporting system for our training providers. In March 2016, she was the lead program staff that helped develop and implement e-applications as well as the pre-approval process. In 2018, she was a key individual in developing and implementing the Occupational Licensing Electronic Application, OLIA, OL's online application. So please welcome Tamara Calhoun.
I know some of y'all are still coming in, so I'll briefly introduce myself. Again, my name is Tamara Calhoun. I'm the section manager in occupational licensing at TCEQ. I've been in occupational licensing for about 22 years. That's just kind of a summary of what she just said. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a licensing overview of what's going on in occupational licensing. We do have some changes that have recently occurred, and we do have some changes that are coming down the pipeline. I do have a lot of information to cover, so some of the slides I'm going to go through rather quickly, but I do believe y'all all get a copy of this presentation, so you can always go back and review those slides. But I want to make sure that we have enough time for the next presenter. So our agenda today, we're going to briefly go over the occupational licensing statistics because that's what you guys like to see. Some of the criminal history requirements, which is always a big topic. Some 2025 rule updates that we just updated and adopted back in March. And the high school program, which if some of y'all were just in the previous forum, you probably heard some of that. And then also some upcoming rule changes that are going to occur based on the legislation that we just got done with, which was pretty busy. So just an overview of what we do in occupational licensing. I know there's a lot of y'all that think that we don't do anything. I hear that quite frequently, but we actually do a lot. And obviously we issue and renew a lot of different licenses for 10 different occupational licensing programs. So I know most of you all are water and wastewater operators, which covers majority of our licenses, but we do have 8 other licensing programs that we maintain as well. For the training side of it that you all have to take to get a license or to renew a license, we review and approve all of that training course and the providers and instructors and everything that goes along with it to make sure that it is applicable to your licensure. The exams that you have to take, we also develop and maintain those, which there are a lot of exams. Off the top of my head, I think we have 46 different licenses and registrations, which majority of those have an exam. So that's a lot of exams to create and maintain over the years. In addition to that, we do job task analysis, or rather known as JTAs, where we survey a lot of you industry folks to see how has technology changed, how has your process changed, what's important, what's not important, which helps us in the development of the exams as well as the approval of the training courses that you take to get the license. So quickly, some statistics. These are FY24. We do our statistics on an annual basis, which is from September 1st to August 31st. So we're about to round out our FY25. But for last year, FY24, we had almost 60,000 licensees, again, over 10 different licensing programs. We issued over 21,000 licenses and processed over 19,000 exams. Here's just a quick breakdown. Like I said, I'm going to go through these pretty quickly so we can get through the information. But as you see, our water and wastewater operators are our 2 heavy programs, where our water treatment specialists and our UST are our smallest programs. Some exam updates. Really, this is kind of not new, but some of you all are not aware of it yet. But all of our exams are on computer-based now, and the only paper exams that we're offering at this time are to accommodate those that need special accommodations based on the ADA requirements. We also have quite a few of our exams that are available in Spanish. When you take the CBT exam, it doesn't differentiate between English and Spanish. So if you go in to take a test, you don't have to ask for a Spanish exam. It is already available on these exams in particular. It will display the question in English, but then in the top left-hand corner, there's a PDF that you can click on, which opens the question in Spanish. And you choose, okay, I want to answer B. So then you close that, and then you select B on the English version. So it's kind of all-inclusive there, so you don't have to request a separate exam. All right, some criminal history requirements. So a little bit of a background. The legislative passed a bill back in 2012, or actually it was before that, that required us to conduct criminal history checks on every applicant. So that's when you get a license and when you renew a license. And it is there to obviously protect public health and, of course, public safety. We definitely do not want to be issuing a license to someone that may hinder one of those, health or safety to our public. So the application review process on criminal history, once we get it, we review the information, or if you have a fingerprint subscription, we get that information as well. Then we verify the information with FBI or Department of Public Safety, whichever one we're looking at. And then certain level of convictions get sent up to our Executive Review Committee. And our Executive Review Committee is made up of management, our deputy director, our attorneys, and some staff that do some of the administrative stuff. So when a decision is made, it is never made by one person. It is a group of people that agree this is how we're going to move forward. So just to kind of give you a little bit of an overview of how that happens, once a decision is made, it is either going to be approved and you're good to go take your test, or have your license renewed, whatever the situation may be. We may deny it, which I'll go over that in just a little bit. And we may need some more information. Maybe there's just not enough information there for us to make a decision. So if you ever get a notice from us saying, hey, we need some more information on this, just provide whatever information you can, as much as you can, so we can make a sound decision. And in some cases, we may have to revoke that license. Statute does give us the authority to automatically revoke a license there's multiple different reasons, but one of them is any felony incarceration. So if you are incarcerated from a felony, or if you are incarcerated for any directly related. And that could mean, if you're like a landscape irrigator or something and you go into customers' homes or on their property quite frequently, maybe some kind of an assault or a theft, that could be directly related because it would give you the opportunity to reoffend and having that license. Some other things that we can deny you on is compliance history, and I'll go over some of that in just a little bit. So there's different risk levels, and depending on the risk level of the license, sometimes depends on our decision, right? Again, a landscape irrigator is going to be like a high-risk type of license because you have more face-to-face, on-property type of connection with those customers. So your risk is going to be a little bit higher than, say, your wastewater collection system operator that's just out in the collection system. You're not going into those customers' homes. You're not going onto their property. You're out in the municipality taking care of those lines. So based on the risk level is sometimes how we base our decision of what that actual conviction or compliance history is about. So your high-risk licenses are your backflows, customer service, landscape irrigators, OSSF, which is your septic installers, and your water treatment specialist. Medium risk is your water operators, LPST, and underground storage tank operators. And then your low risks is your MSW and your wastewater operators. So the grounds for consideration for denial, as I mentioned earlier, an offense that directly relates to the duties and responsibilities of that license. Again, fraud, theft, assault, sexual assault, things like that could definitely be directly related. Also an offense that's listed in the Criminal Code of Procedures, 42.12, which is serious crimes of violent offense, murder, aggravated assault, kidnapping, aggravated sexual assaults, things like that are definitely going to get our attention and make us think twice about giving someone a license. Also, sexually violent offenses that are identified in the Criminal Code of Procedures 62.001. Again, compliance issues that we can deny on, anything that's identified in the Water Code Section 37.005. Sometimes some of y'all have been given a citation for maybe not having a license, or maybe your sample report didn't come out right or something like that. That's probably not going to get you a license denied, but if you have repeat offenses and citations that go to enforcement, things like that, that could definitely get our attention and think twice about giving you a license. Because if you're not doing the right thing while you're holding the license, why do we want to continue to allow you to do that? Some other things that could get you denied, which I think is actually on the next page, is if you're delinquent on fees of any kind, or taxes or anything owed to the state, we can withhold your license on that until you clear that up. Other grounds that we can revoke or deny your license on, providing fraudulent information, especially on your application. That could also mean fraudulent reports, your sampling report, your DMR, whatever kind of report. Fraudulent information on a governmental document is a serious thing that we do not take lightly. Also, fraud or deceit in obtaining or applying for the license or registration, like cheating on an exam. For some reason, over the last few years, we've had quite a bit of an uptick in individuals providing fraudulent information on their application, as well as deceit or fraud in trying to obtain the license. Individuals that are trying to take phones into the CBT centers and take pictures of the exam, or look stuff up on the web. And what you all may not realize is those CBT centers have cameras and they share that information with us. And that will definitely get your application denied and potentially any licenses that you may have revoked. So I would not encourage cheating on a licensing application or an exam, or committing any crime. How about that? All right, so determinations if an offense is actually related to the license is the actual work that's performed. Again, you're at a wastewater treatment plant and you're just there. That may not, have a direct impact on the public like it would if you're a landscape irrigator or a septic installer. Also, the access that's required to the license. Again, if you have access to that homeowner's property or things like that, we look at that. And then some other factors is, the seriousness of the crime. Was it a $50 theft versus a $50,000 theft? Things like that. Relationship to the crime to the license. We have quite a few people that actually commit crimes while holding the license, which, falsification of reports, governmental documents, things like that. Those are charged criminally. So then that's going to show up on your records. And then also the extent that the license provides the opportunity to reoffend. If we give you that license, are you going to be able to reoffend with that license? Because we definitely don't want that to happen. And then the relationship of the crime and ability to do the job. So those are some factors that we take into consideration. So criminal history pre-evaluation. If you've never had a license with us and you are wanting to take some training, or you've taken some training and you're ready to apply, but you think your background is serious enough that may get you denied, we will offer a pre-evaluation. And currently the pre-evaluation is, there's no charge. But when we do update our rules, which we've opened our rules now, we are going to be including a charge for that. So, and it's a minimal charge. I can't remember the exact fee because that could change. So even if I could remember it, I don't want to say because it could change. But if you do need a pre-evaluation in the future, there will be a fee for that. Again, this is for those that do not currently have a license. If you already have a license, you've already been through the criminal history review, and if you've committed a new crime, then we're just going to have to see if whatever you committed is going to allow you to keep your license. So don't commit any crimes while holding a license, because that's not good. One thing I would like to mention, and we've kind of had an uptick in this as well, is this pre-evaluation is not an employee screening tool. So if your employer is relying on this to determine whether they're going to hire someone or not, that is not the intent of this. This is the intent to see if an individual is eligible for a license. Each employer should be doing their own criminal background checks, making their own determinations. If needed, put some stipulations in your hiring packet that says you must be able to get a license. If you don't, then you're either going to be demoted or, unfortunately let go. So, the employers need to make their determination on whether they're going to hire somebody based on their background checks.
I guess Department of Correction, they say they got convicts working on a wastewater treatment plant in their prison compound or whatever it is. Would they still be eligible to get a license, or they don't?
So per the statute, they're not actually eligible for a license. However, we have developed a program years ago where we offer a certificate for that incarcerated individual to be able to operate the wastewater treatment plant at that prison facility. So they have to meet all the same requirements that anybody else does, the training, testing, all of that, education, everything, with the exception of the criminal history background check, because we know they're in prison, right? And most of these individuals are their trustees, and they're usually on a path to get released rather quickly, not rather quickly, but soon. They're not serving life sentences, in other words. And so those individuals, once they are released, they can submit a criminal history attestation to us and request that their certificate be converted to an actual license once they're released. So we do work with the prisons on that. We're actually going to go in a couple months and give some exams to some of the trustees there in one of the prisons. So yes, we do that several times a year, and we've got quite a few prisoners that are, we call it a certificate because it's not an actual license. But when they're released, they can convert that over to a license. Great question. These are the areas that if you have something in one of these areas, we would highly recommend a pre-evaluation if this is going to be your first license. Again, if you already have a license, you've already been through the criminal history process, just don't commit any new ones and you won't have anything to worry about. All right, so some criminal history statistics for last FY. We did over 26,000 DPS searches. As a result, 398 of those were sent to the Executive Review Committee. And out of those, we had 97 denials, and 29 of those requested hearings, and 7 of those hearings were still pending. Of course, that was at the end of FY24, so that obviously has updated since then. If you are denied an application based on your criminal history or compliance history, you have an opportunity to request a hearing. And that hearing is done through the state offices of administrative hearing. And it's like a little mini trial, as best I can describe it. There is a judge. We have attorneys that represent us. You can have an attorney represent you, or you can represent yourself, whatever you prefer on that. And everybody kind of pleads their case of, we're going to plead the case of why we think you should be denied, and of course you're going to plead your case of why you think you should have a license. And then ultimately the judge makes the decision. So it is a very lengthy process on the hearing, because once you request a hearing, the dates are pretty much out of our hands. Again, it's done through the State Office of Administrative Hearings. So you can request a hearing within a week of us denying you or intending to deny you, and the process could still take a year or more, depending on what the situation is. The first letter we're going to send you, we're just going to tell you we intend to deny you, and at that point you can submit some more mitigating circumstances, kind of like plead your case. Hey, this was, this is what happened, and here's some letters of recommendation, and all this other stuff. And we may end up settling with you and not denying that application, which is fine. But if we still go ahead and say, no, we're going to go ahead and deny you, then at that case you can request a hearing, and then everybody's side will be heard and a decision will be made that's out of our hands. Okay, so some rules that were updated last year. First of all, I want to cover statutory versus rule. So statutory changes or statute is we have to abide by statute. These are legislative mandates that we don't have any choice in the matter on. So if there is a statute change, we have to do it no matter what. Rules, we have a little bit more leeway. If statutory says you have the authority to make these rules, then we have a little bit more leeway, and we involve the stakeholders, you all, to help us decide whether we're going to move forward with something or not, or change it and whatnot. And I'll go over that in just a little bit, but just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of statutory versus rule changes. So 2 sessions ago, in the 88th legislative session, there were quite a few bills that were passed, and based on those bills that passed, we had to make some rule changes based on these statute changes. So House Bill 2453 amended the Texas Occupations Code by adding Chapter 60, which is digital licenses, and it gives us the authority to send you all digital licenses if we choose to. So this is a statutory that doesn't require us to. It says we can, or you know, if we decide to. At this point, we have not transitioned to digital licenses. That will be something in the future, but we did update our rules that says we may issue a digital license. So in the future, that is covered. Senate Bill 422 with some statutory requirements that changed with the military, which required us to review a license within 30 days of receiving it, which we do regardless. So this was not hard to implement, thankfully. And then, you know, get that out the door. Now, this only applies to those individuals that are not deficient. If you're deficient, there's going to be time added on for you to clear what you need to clear and then get it back to us to re-review, things like that. So we updated our rules based on this statute. House Bill 1845 was requiring of the provisional licenses, that's the provisional D and the D water and D wastewater, which has all the same requirements of a D water and wastewater license without the high school diploma. This is definitely helping our high school program, which I'll talk about in just a little bit. But we get this question a lot. It is not just for high schoolers. So if you're one of those out there, 37 years old, and you never finished high school, that's fine. You can get a provisional with the intent of obviously working on your high school diploma to have it converted over to a license in the future. So the provisional D licenses, eligibility, no high school diploma or GED required. You still have to complete the basic course. You still have to pass a criminal background check and pass the applicable exam. The fee is a little less, it's $74 because the license is only good for 2 years and it cannot be renewed. So before that license expires, you must either upgrade to a C if you can, or if you can't, that's fine. You must request to convert it to the actual D license. And at that point, you should have your high school diploma or GED. You must also act under the supervision of another licensed operator. Oh, and it's not reobtainable. So if you don't get your D license or your C, you cannot go back and get that provisional. It's a one-time opportunity to, you know, again, the intent is for you to work on your high school diploma or GED to be able to get the actual license. So upgrading the provisional license, before the expiration date, you submit an application for your actual D license, and then you know, show that you've graduated high school or got your GED. And of course, we're going to do a new criminal background check on you because a lot can change in 1-2 years, things like that. But you do not have to take the test again. So you just submit the application for the D, and then if all of the criteria is met, we'll issue that D, and then that license will be valid for 3 years, just like any normal D. And then at that point, you have all the rules that apply, whether you need to upgrade or if you can renew that D, you know, what have you. If you qualify for the C, the training and experience, then you would apply for the C, and of course you would have to take that exam because it's a completely different exam than the D. So all of that has to be done prior to your provisional license expiring. If you're beyond the deadline for the renewing the D, which you can't, but if you're beyond that time, then you would have to reapply and retest for the D license rather than just converting it over. All right, so this is a huge topic, resiliency training for water operators. So back in 2021 at the 87th, so 3 sessions ago, however you want to figure it, passed Senate Bill 3 to address the Storm Uri that came through and caused a lot of devastation to some of our water plants and wastewater plants alike. And in that, they developed this resiliency policy where water operators are required to take resiliency training to get a license and to renew a license. So, of course, Winter Storm Uri, all of that, everybody, doesn't want to relive that, so I'm not going to go into details on that one. But applications received on or after April 1st, 2024 are required to, this is new applications, are required to take the Resiliency Overview course. This is a 2-hour course, and it's an overview of all the required topics that they have outlined for resiliency. One of 2 ways. If you can take it through a basic water and then a separate 2-hour course, or in some cases, if the training provider has a basic water and the resiliency put together, it's a 22-hour course. You can take it either way with that. I'm going to back up just for 1 second because a lot of you are in this area right here where you got the license prior to April 1st of 2024, and we are requiring you to take that resiliency overview course in one of the next 2 renewal cycles. Many of you are taking it up front, that first renewal cycle, and that's great, you're getting it out of the way. But if you held the license prior to April 1st of 2024, you still have to get that resiliency overview on your training record. And that's why we are requiring you to take it in one of your next 2 renewal periods. This course is not typically considered a continuing education course and will not count to meet the resiliency requirements to renew the license, except for this one-time exception to get it on your record. So you got a license in 2023, a water license, let me specify that. In 2023, you're up for renewal 2026, and you take the resiliency overview course for 2 hours. We will count that as a one-time exception to meet the resiliency requirements for renewal. Going forward, any renewals after that, you will have to take at least 2 hours of any one of the approved resiliency continuing education courses. So it's really important that you note there's the overview and continuing education, okay? Because they are really 2 separate. The overview is for core training to get a license. But those that got the license prior to the requirement, we're allowing it one time for you to get it on your record to be in compliance with that. Does that make sense?
We got 2 questions from some virtual attendees.
Okay.
The first one is, I'm about to renew my license and I have completed the resilience training course. The credit hours for this course are listed under my training record, but TCEQ is still stating I haven't completed the course. What can I do to resolve this issue?
So I think what he's referring to is on our website, when you go look at your license information, we have a column over there that says resiliency, and it's either going to say yes or no, meaning have you met the resiliency requirement or not. The reason it's saying no for most of you right now is because you took the overview course. And as I mentioned, the overview course is not considered continuing education. We are allowing it that one-time exception, right? So if you took the overview, which you might have had to because it needs to get on your record, right? It's going to say no in that column because it's not a continuing education. Just trust that our team is trained enough to know that that overview course is going to meet that requirement for that one time. Going forward in your next renewal period after this license renews, then you'll get a continuing education course and you'll see that column change to yes.
And another one that's related. What if you took resiliency for renewal in 2023?
It would depend on which renewal course they took and Because there were some resiliency training available in 2023, yes. So, and I think at that point there was only overview available. I don't think they had any continuing education available at that time. So if he or she is renewing for the first time, then that would count. If it was the overview, it would count towards their continuing education for the resiliency requirement. So it's really hard to say without getting some more information. I encourage that individual to call our office and talk to a licensing specialist that can look at all the license information for that particular person.
The 2 hours that we have to take, so I got my license after April 1st, so I took the overview. So this first 3-year window that you have to get your 30 hours to renew, is that resiliency 2 hours on top of the 30, or is it part of the 30?
Great question. It's she asked if the 2 hours of resiliency is on top of the 30 hours required to renew or included with the 30 hours. It's included. It is not on top of. So 2 of the 30 must be resiliency. She's coming to you, sir.
If I have a surface water license, a distribution license, and a groundwater license, and I take the resiliency 2-hour course, and they're all coming up for renewal, do I have to take it 3 times?
The question is, he has multiple water licenses, and does he have to take the resiliency 3 times over? No. What you take for one will apply towards the others because it's water. It credits the water. Resiliency will also credit wastewater, although wastewater is not required to have resiliency, but we did make it to where it credits. So you'll also get 2 hours on any or more wastewater licenses that you may have. Licenses are valid for 3 years, so you must get it every 3 years. It'll be ongoing. So from here on to the end of time or until you don't renew your licenses, you'll have to get at least 2 hours of resiliency continuing education.
Holding 2 licenses, 1 BPAT, 1 water. Do I have to have 2 resiliency classes, 1 for each of those, or they're both considered water?
The question was, he holds a BPAT and a water, and does he need to get resiliency for both of those? No, the resiliency requirement is only for water licenses. So any other license that you may have with us, it is not required. Now, again, the resiliency training is approved for water and wastewater. So if you have a wastewater license, it will give you 2 hours of training towards that renewal for that wastewater license, but it's not required to have for wastewater.
Are there any 8-hour classes?
There is not at this time. I'm only aware of 2-hour classes, but training providers are welcome to submit for any amount of time they have. So I need to get moving along. I'm happy to answer any questions out there, but I was just told I only have 5 minutes left. So actually 7, right? Okay, so the training curriculum, again, I'm not gonna really cover this, but these are the topics that have to be covered in the resiliency training. Again, the overview is just kind of a touch on all of those topics, where the continuing education is a more in-depth of 1 or more of these topics. Okay, so some updates that we have going on in our rule changes that we just adopted in March is some training terminology and some other minor updates. Some training terminology that changed was to include like live online, things that kind of developed since COVID. Some of the terminology has changed, as well as we're going to incorporate a $10 fee for instructor qualifications, that's for instructors, and just some other minor changes to provide some consistency. Another thing we did remove was the option to renew by exam for water and wastewater operators. Resiliency was the reason we had to remove it for water, and then just to make it consistent, we removed it from the wastewater. All right, the high school program, which I'm sure some of y'all have already heard about that. We've collaborated with some some high schools have collaborated with some local municipalities and held the basic water course, some over the summer, some during the year through the SETH program, some outside of the SETH program. But if your school is interested in that, I would suggest reaching out to TEA or Texas American Water Works Association, and we're currently working with the with WHEAT on the basic wastewater side. So that will be coming in the future as well. But this is available to any high school in the state of Texas, so I encourage you, if you are aware, get with your high school and get them moving on that. Again, the new high school program is to encourage those youngsters to come on into the field because we have a lot of people retiring and otherwise getting out of the business, and we are in dire need of water and wastewater operators. And again, TAWWA as well as TEA, and now we're working with WHEAT to do that. And once they have the provisional, they can convert it to an actual license. So the provisional license still applies to these high schoolers. And all right, so quickly, some 89th, we just got out of the 89th legislative session. We had lots of bills that were there, and 6 of them directly affect us. Only 4 of those require us to do some rulemaking. So House Bill 1237 extends the time for you to renew your license. Currently, you only have 30 days after your expiration date to renew. Those that expire September 1st and after, you will have up to 180 days to renew. So it extends that time. And we'll have more information on this as we go through the rule process. So I encourage you to check our website frequently and participate in those stakeholder meetings to have your voice heard on all of this. Now, again, these are statutory requirements, so we can't really change a lot of this. Remember, I told you statutory were required, but some of the information that we can apply to this would be rule and stakeholders. 5629 and 1818 amends the reciprocity requirements for military service members, spouses, and veterans, waiving fees for all new applications. Currently, we only had it the initial application, meaning the first application they submitted. Any subsequent ones would require a fee. This is eliminating that fee. And again, new applications, they still must pay for renewals. And Senate Bill 1080 is the automatic revocation process, which we just have to memorialize that in rule, but we already do it the way that the statute intended. Also, we received an ethics petition for water and wastewater operators to require ethics training. We were petitioned for this rule change from an outside entity, from WHEAT and Texas American Water Works Association. And so they're requesting 4 hours of ethics training for water and wastewater operators. This is a rule change, so this is where your voice could be heard in those stakeholder meetings. And based on how you guys respond to that, depends on how we implement it or not implement it, depending on what the situation is. Again, the ethics training would be within that 30 hours. It would not be adding any more training hours. Fingerprint and some other changes. We are proposing to require all applicants to subscribe to the fingerprinting process. And then just some other minor updates like we do just to provide some clarification and maybe edit some words that may not be clarifying, things like that. So tentative rulemaking timeline. Actually, we had to change the September stakeholder meeting to October, but then everything else is just to be determined, but that's basically the chain of command. And it usually takes a good year or more before rules are adopted and go into effect. All right, more information, you can go there. And if anybody has any questions, yes, sir.
You were showing just a minute ago about the shortage of operators and people retiring and leaving. What about reciprocity as well as nationwide operators? An operator in another state, he wants to come down here and work in Texas in a wastewater plant or a water plant is almost identical, where he worked at. And it showed that when they were showing this legislature thing, it looked like they rejected it or something.
I'm not sure about that. We do have a reciprocity program, so anybody from another state is welcome to apply for a license here with a license that they have in another state. But what kind of programs are out there to get them to come here, I would not know that. That would probably be some of the organizations around. Yep, we offer reciprocity to any one of the states and territories. So they're welcome to come here and we'll look at their license.
Ma'am, on the bottom of one of your slides, it said that TCQ doesn't care about driving violations. When we're filling out the applications for these new guys that start, do we need to skip, like if they have a DWI, do we need to fill all that stuff in and add all the paperwork or just omit it?
Yeah, so anything a Class C misdemeanor and below, you do not need to put on your application. Class B misdemeanor and above is what we're concerned about. And most driving violations are Class Cs. Yeah, no, not on Class Cs, no need. Thank you.